Hello, welcome to Narrative. My name is Veronica, and today we're going to be talking about creative energy, and not in the sense of how to streamline your process or anything. We're going to be talking about why you're out of it and how you can help yourself cultivate more energy that you can use in order to create more stuff. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Will my mic be okay? I forgot that this part with my hair start getting long. Woo, okay. I feel that. We'll see if it's a lot of well, I'm sorry, okay? I need to figure out something for next time, okay? Anyway, there's a lot of tips and tricks on how to fix your process, what to do, and how to change everything about what you're doing. In order to produce more, be more productive, create more, pump up more bugs, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of tips and tricks and advice regarding that. I'm doing a lot of this today. Okay. There's a lot of that stuff going around. So I thought maybe talk about what could be causing the shortage of creative energy rather than how to fix the symptoms. So we're gonna go down into the core today, okay? So the first thing I wanna say is there's no one tip that is gonna rule them all, okay? You need to figure out what works for you. That's why this video's content is going to be more generalized, because I want to give you a chance to answer questions on your own in order to figure out what works for you. Because as I said, it's all individual. What worked for me might not work for you. Some parts might work for you and other parts won't. You need to figure out what works for you. And that is one of the topics today. Figure out your own process. You need to sit down with yourself and ask what is working, what is not working, and then keep the things that are working and then look at the things that aren't working and ask yourself honestly, why? For example, I am just now trying out to write a serial. That's not something I've ever done before in like original publishing. I have very fond roots in fan fiction where you wrote chapter by chapter, and I loved it. I was so creative. And then I don't really know why I didn't realize that vellum was a thing. And like there's a lot of different platforms that caters specifically to chapter by chapter posting and reading that are still original content, not fan fiction, that is. So right now I'm trying my hands at that in order to feel out, hey, is chapter by chapter really my thing? And so far it seems to be something that is very like a lot of interest in my process, in my brain. And right now, yeah, it seems like it might be. It's really interesting to write. It's a very different process. There's a lot of anxiety for me regarding not being able to edit as much as I am used to when you produce like a full book, but that's also kind of the fun of it. You kind of had to challenge yourself, and I love challenging myself. That's why I even went from like high traditional classic fantasy stuff to writing romance for the first time that also had sex in it. Oh my god, like because it was such a out of my comfort zone kind of thing. And now the serial aspect of it is not a problem for me. Like writing chapter by chapter, as I said, I have very fond, stable roots in the fan fiction territory where you kind of, I found my footing, if you will. That's not the part that causes me anxiety, right? The part that causes me anxiety is lack of editing and, you know, a more raw sense of the writing, because I can't afford having an editor that reads chapter by chapter. I just don't have that money. So it's just gonna have to be something I accept. It's very exciting. But you have to ask yourself, is serial maybe this way of publishing, is that more your style? Or are you the one that wants to chase book by book? Or are you the kind of like, no, I need to have like the series done before I start publishing? All of these approaches are valid and okay. You just need to figure out what works for you. And of course, there's so many variables that you need to keep in track of, because you like, okay, how much does my work allow? Family, social aspects, energy level, mental health, physical health, all of these things eat up your time. And you need to be able to focus on them as well, because writing is a marathon, not a sprint. That is kind of the core aspect. If there's anything that you take away from anything I ever create, it's these two things, okay? Perfection isn't a thing, and marathon, not a sprint, okay? Marathon runners take breaks and allow themselves to rest, and you need to as well. That leads me into my next point, and that is your mental health. Take a fucking break. Okay? It's okay to take a break. You need to take a break, because otherwise you're gonna end up like me, and I ended up getting 4 diagnoses at one time. I got depression, I got anxiety, I got insomnia, and burnout in the same session. Like at the same time. That was an experience, okay? Your mental health very heavily dictates how much creative energy you have. Because if your energy is going to just surviving the day, yeah, of course you're not gonna have energy to do creative stuff. If all your energy goes into just surviving and getting out of the bed and taking care of yourself, be kind to yourself. It's fine that you're not writing. I understand. That feeling of I should be writing, I want to be writing, which I personally feel is more important than should. Whatever. Should is like a dream thing that is pressure. It's external pressure. That one you can train. Anytime you say I should be doing X, that's usually external pressure telling you to do something. I understand that feeling of wanting to write, but just nothing coming out. You're sitting there with the laptop or a piece of paper, and you just like, I have it in my head and it just won't come out. And then you get more and more tired every time. And eventually you just stop trying. I get it. I've been there. I understand. And it's valid. What you need to do is take a step back and look at what your life looks like. Genuinely take a step back, pause everything that has to do with this creative endeavor, and just look at what are draining you right now. Is it work? Is it social life? Is it other projects that you're working on? Is it self-care? What is draining you? And then you focus on one problem at a time and you try to switch that. Let's say socially, it's being very draining. Look at your friends. Honestly, it sounds weird, it sounds harsh, but do you have good friends? Or are you surrounded by toxic people who are pulling more energy from you than you get from being with them? Maybe maybe it's time you distance yourself from them. That's a very big drain. You're spending so much time. Maybe if you're a people pleaser, hi, how's my crowd doing? How's my people? If you're a people pleaser, and this is something that I work on still very much, it is to distance yourself from other people's opinions. You are spending so much energy and time and focus on pleasing other people that by the time you sit down to do something for yourself, your cup is empty. You need to take ownership of the fact that you have shitty friends or whatever it might be, and take steps for yourself, for your own mental health, physical health, and just enjoy, what do you call it? Enjoyability of life? Joy of life? Like, if you don't feel comfortable or possible to remove them completely, just take steps to engage with them less and less, piece by piece. It will help you, bring peace. So your mental health is crucial in order to have creative energy. Because if your energy is going everywhere else, of course your creative energy isn't being replenished. That's just the gist of it. Gist of it? Gist of it? Gist? I think it's gist. I looked this up a few weeks ago, but I can't remember now. Pick your word. Or rather, pick your pronunciation, okay? Following up on that is toxic expectations, and those expectations usually come from in here, okay? They're usually in your head, and they're not necessarily your own thoughts. They have been implanted there by a very lovely society we live in. Which is also another step to further support what I just said about having better people around you, because better people will not be supporting those weird thoughts in your head, okay? So yeah, be more, oh fuck, what's the word? My American friend said it when he visited last year. He's more intentional. Be more intentional with your friendships and everything in your life, essentially. Be more intentional with where you're putting energy and curating your energy. And you will see, not just in creative energy, but in life in general, you will see progression where you otherwise didn't. But going back to toxic expectations, you probably think that you should be producing 4 books a year and have social media on top of everything. You're supposed to make videos like this. You're supposed to do X, Y, Z. Should, and should. Truth is that there's no one way to success. I know authors who only do newsletters, no social media, and they are doing this full time. And then on the other hand, I have seen authors who've tried to only do newsletter and they cannot do it. They have to be on top of social media. They have to do collaborations. They have to do podcasts, everything in order to keep that momentum up. Everything, it's a whole fucking spectrum, okay? There's no one way to get there. You need to try things, you need to make mistakes, you need to fail at things and then try again and figure out what works not only for you, but also for your audience. But today we're focusing on you. So, toxic expectations, very much, you're trying to run a car without an engine kind of situation. If your mental health is shit, you're not taking care of yourself. Your surroundings are draining you as hell and you're not having a time to recover, but you're still expecting yourself to produce the same level of content as someone who is doing one full time, but probably also have background in maybe video editing or in text editing or marketing, who has skills that you might not have. But even if you have those skills, if you aren't able to do this full time, you cannot expect full-time results out of yourself. You just can't, okay? So you also need to manage your own expectations and really check the voices in your heads, okay? Speaking of voices in your head, you need to work with your brain, okay? More and more people are realizing that they're neuroatypical, which means that certain things that come easy to some people is literally not possible for another person, and you need to figure out what does and what does not work for you and not punish yourself for something not working. The thing that I started out this whole self-discovery creativity journey was this particular aspect. What the fuck is wrong with me? You know, I had that question, like, I'm doing everything and I'm trying, but I'm just getting more and more tired, and it's like an uphill battle every time I sit down to write, to create social media, to do anything. And in the end, I just had to accept, okay, so whatever I'm doing here is not working in here. So I need to figure out ways to work with my brain, not against it. And there are millions of videos out there that can give you tips and tricks on how to work together with your brain. And I recommend you watch them. If you know you have ADHD, watch a shit ton of videos, probably 3 at the same time, to just figure out, okay, this thing worked for that person, this thing worked for that person, this version of this thing worked for this person, but not for that person. Because even within one way of brain patterns, like with ADHD or autism or whatever you might have, there are variations within that as well. So if be careful too. I mentioned it in an earlier video. Don't take advice at face value. Always do your due diligence. Ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Why is it not? Why is it? Because we're very focused on figuring out why something isn't working, but we often also, there's so much to learn from why is it working that could help you along with a different aspect of your brain or your process or your life. So don't shy away from asking, why is this working as well? And I know, like when you're starting out, a lot of the answers is going to be, I don't know. And that's fine. You will find the answer further down the road. Just keep going. So seek out advice from people who are experiencing the same things that you are, and then pick and choose what you're following and try out different things and give it time to work. We're not talking you trying it for 2 weeks kind of thing. No. It takes at least 21 days to create a habit. But in general, I would recommend that you give it maybe 3 months at the very minimum. I work in comms and communications and marketing, and I say that anything that is less than 6 months, you will never really know the accuracy of the statistics you're getting from that. So if you're trying something out, you're trying a new habit, you're trying to build a new habit, and you're trying to do it less than low count 3 months, you're just setting yourself up for failure. It's not indicative of whether or not something worked if it didn't work within the first 3 months. You need to give yourself time to run into snags, run into mistakes, and improve and change the process. And never, ever be afraid to change the process. It is immensely helpful to tweak and iterate on things. You need to do this in order to help yourself. And especially when it comes to working along with your brain changes, okay? Your interest changes, your habits changes, and you need to be open to changing your process of creativity as well. Otherwise, you're probably like me, getting bored of something, and then you stagnate, and then you fall off, and then you're back on square one. So don't be afraid to change. Going back to what I was talking about, like where your energy is going, like with social and all of that stuff, I want to focus a little bit more on that, because I don't think people recognize how much energy management actually helps you. For example, if you are working a job where you have to do creative thinking, and I don't only mean like photography or a graphic designer or video editor or whatever, those are very like obviously creative work, but any job where you need to come up with creative solutions. For example, coding, like you developing stuff, you have to figure out how to solve a bug. That is also creative thinking. That does drain you. So if you have a highly creative job, your creative energy is going to be drained during work, and you're going to have less to work with in your free time. That is also something to keep in mind. Yeah, you might not be able to change your job, but then you also need to manage your expectations of your production levels. On the other hand, if you're working a lot with your hands and not need to necessarily activate your brain so much in order to create solutions, maybe you've done something so much that you don't need to activate your brain anymore, even if it is creative. I don't know. At some point, it gets easier to kind of shut off your brain so that you don't drain your energy, so that when you come back home, you still have more energy to work with. Who knows? But basically take stock of where your energy is going and how much you're spending at work. And if it's a type of job where you don't necessarily need to use so much creative energy, maybe figure out ways to lessen it during your work days in order to raise the amount of energy you have left at the end of the day to be creative. That's something that I had to do with my different types of jobs. I had to figure out, like, why am I spending so much emotional energy? Because that's also part of creative energy, that I'm spending so much of my emotional focus and energy on at work where it's not being reciprocated. It doesn't have any value. So how about I dial that shit back and I conserve it for when I do creative stuff when I come home. Because dialing back also helped me with my health in general, both mental and physical, because I wasn't expending so much energy all the time that just went into the ether. I got to keep that in order to put that energy into something that I felt I got something back from. So that also really, really helped a lot. And last but not least, have other hobbies. You don't necessarily need to have non-creative hobbies, but have hobbies that are creative in different ways. So for example, if you do a lot of writing, maybe take up photography or music or other creative stuff that isn't text-based or story-based kind of situations, because then you're splitting the limited energy you already have for similar creativity. Whereas if you have different types, for example, I do photography, although these are mine. I do photography as well, and for me those are completely different energies. So when I go out and do my photography, I rest my writing creative mind in order to, when I come home and I don't want to do photo editing, I sit down and write instead. And maybe even taking photos like this actually inspires me. I'm like, oh, I could include this in this other story and then file it for later, and then when I come home I sit down and write it out. So having different hobbies can really help you, subconsciously at the very least, rest your mind so that you recover more of your creative energy. You need to ask yourself, where are you spending energy? Why are you spending that energy? And do you still want to spend that energy in that particular way? And how does your ideal life look like so that you can take small incremental steps towards that? And for me, one of the things that I have as my core aspect is I don't want my writing to be draining. With that in mind, I need to take steps every day that make sure that I'm not draining myself while I'm writing. Whether that is accepting that today I'm not writing anything because I am taking damage if I'm draining myself further, or you know, pushing through a depressive episode because depression wants to make sure that you do nothing. So doing anything is good. As I said in the beginning, there is no one way to do this. You need to continuously ask yourself, what is working, what is not working, how can I change that, what do I want to change? And ask yourself the questions that helps you along the way. And a lot of the time you can find that in videos online, or even in texts online as well, or in books for that matter. Wherever it is, you can find inspiration, try them out, tweak them if it doesn't really work that well, because you know that this thing over here isn't working, but this thing over here is working, switch them up. It's okay to make your own way through life, and it's okay that your brain works in different ways. You just need to figure out how to work with that rather than trying to force yourself to change into something that society views as acceptable. And that's gonna have to be the end of the video. If you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe, and if you have any tips or tricks of your own, leave them down below. And otherwise, I wish you have a good day, night, or wherever you are in time stream, and I will see you next time. Bye.